the city of Capernaum. They have left Caesarea Philippi. It's in the northern part of Israel by the seacoast. And at Caesarea Philippi, he was confessed to be the Christ, the Son of the living God, by Peter. He's also told the disciples at Caesarea Philippi that their journey, which they're setting out on, will eventually end in Jerusalem. And when they get to Jerusalem, he will be arrested, he will be crucified, and he will die for the sins of the world. Now they are on the journey, and they've arrived at Capernaum. And while they are on the way, they have been talking amongst themselves, so that when they get there into Capernaum, and they find a house to stay at, Jesus gathers them and he says, "What were you all talking about on the journey?" Well, they kind of suddenly looking at their shoes and making dust circles with their toes and looking everywhere but into Jesus' eyes. And probably a bit ashamed. In fact, the scripture says they didn't respond. Because along the way, they had been arguing about who among them was the greatest and would have first place in Jesus' kingdom. Well, he said to them, I'm going to Jerusalem to die, and it looks a bit callous and shallow that they have been arguing about what they're going to get out of it. But Jesus says to them something that's totally unexpected as I read that text. It's not a text for the day. Don't worry about what's up there. I'll get to it in a minute. But he says something that is just so unexpected. Instead of chiding them or embarrassing them or lifting them up and just really exhorting them, he says to them, "You want to be the best? You want to be first?" He takes it at face value. That he understands, I guess, what's really in their heart. And he doesn't condemn them for it. He says, "You want to be the best?" Now that's the first surprise in that text. But the second one's right on the heels of it. The first surprise is that Jesus didn't judge them or condemn them for what's in their hearts. You want to be the best. All right, that's good. The second surprise, though, is if you want to be the best, you've got to be the least. Now that's a shocking surprise. And this is exactly how Jesus said it to them. Whoever wants to be first must be least of all and the servant of all. How do you get to be the best by being the least? How does that work? You know, all of us, Jesus acknowledges, like I said, doesn't condemn him, acknowledges that we want to be the best, and all of us at one time or another in our life have a desire to be the best at something. You want to be the best parent. You want to be better parents than your mom and dad. You know people like that? Maybe you've been there. We had friends that wanted to raise perfect children. And that didn't make it, but they wanted it. You see, the thing about this is whatever we want to be, and this changes at different moments in life, whatever we want to be says a lot about our priorities. In fact, Paul Tillich said we all have a kind of ultimate concern. What he meant by that, in an ultimate concern, something that's the most important to us at any given moment in life, around which everything else centers. That ultimate concern is often identified simply by what our ambitions are. What do you want to be the best at? In my age of life, what I want to be is the best grandfather in all the world. And I want to be that guy. I took my grandkids riding in go-karts a couple summers ago. All the ones from Florida, and Isaac and Barrett. Well, Barrett says, "We're actually going to go ride go-karts?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm taking out to." It was just me. Everybody else was busy talking. The kids were getting restless. I thought, I want to go do something fun with them. We went out to Cody go-karts and we're going to rent go-karts, and Barrett goes, "You're the best grandpa in all the world." And boy, I thought, "Yeah, you're right, kid. Just keep it up. Say that." That's what I wanted to be, the best grandpa in all the world. And I know as the best grandpa in all the world, one of the things you don't do at Christmas time is tell your grandkids, "This year, instead of getting you all presents, we decided to give money to Bread for the World in your name." No, that doesn't work. Not at their age. There's all kinds of gifts on them. Because to be the best, you got to give the best, right? You're not the least. Well, none of us. This is truth. Man, now we're so accustomed to hearing Jesus say this, and we just kind of immediately reinterpret it for ourselves. But come on. Today, if you don't sell yourself, are you going to get the good job? Who writes a resume where they try to be real humble and play down their strengths? Yeah, I'm not too good, and this is where now. Or who says, this is who I'm at the least? No, you put on that resume everything that you do the best because you want the job. Who's going to promote the person who says they're unqualified? That's just not going to happen. And to rise socially, you got to be well connected. You may rise socially and care for the poor, but it's better if, caring for the poor means that you're giving a check at some gala, dressed in your tux and somebody else in their evening gown and they're drinking champagne and toasting yourselves for being so kind-hearted. That's better socially than actually rubbing elbows with the poor. No, we all know that. That's the way the world works. We view life as a competition, and, who enters a contest hoping for last place? We had a lot of kids sending things in the fair this summer. They were all somewhere here at the first service, and I said, did you take all those projects to the fair hoping you'd win a white ribbon? No, you all were going for the purple. I know you were. You entered those projects at the fair hoping you'd be judged the best. And you're up there at the state fair with some of those projects because you were judged the best. You got the grand champion. They're up there and you're hoping you fare just as well at the state fair as you did our Logan County fair. That's just the way of the world it is. You know you don't get to be the best by being the least. So how is it? What does Jesus mean? How do we get to be the best by being the least? I think this is the question that James takes up with his church because he sees in his congregation something that we experience today. His people and his church are caught up in the dog-eat-dog world of competition, trying to excel and get ahead, and they're favoring the rich in the congregation, in the church. And James is talking to them about this. They know then, just as we know now, that you be the best, you got to be the best. You got to do the best. You got to rise above everybody else. You don't identify with the least. And here's what James has to say to them about that. My brothers, as believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, don't show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in shabby clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there or sit on the floor by my feet, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my dear brothers, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom He promised those who love Him? But you have insulted the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? See, here's the dog-eat-dog world. Are they not the ones who are slandering the noble name of Him to whom you belong? If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it. That's the text for the day. You see what James is doing there? The words of Jesus. This is Jesus' brother, half-brother. And the words of Jesus, they're known by the church now. They know this, what Jesus has taught. They don't have the Gospels written out to say like you and I have, but they know what Jesus has taught. Jesus himself gave examples of how it is that we can be the best by being the least. He put, in fact, at the very moment that he says this to him in Capernaum, he takes the child. There's one evidently close at hand for his object lesson. And he pulls this child to his side and he says, whoever wants to be first must become like this child. And children were thought of as the least in Jesus' world. Women and children, down low on the social ladder. And that's what Jesus is saying. You want to be first, you've got to become like this child. Well, how do we do that? How do you and I become the least? If we try to do that as some kind of strategy for getting to be the best, then we're just often self-serving, and it doesn't work. It's just as prideful as any other way. So here's what James says, and it's kind of the same thing Jesus said. If you want to be the best, serve the least. In the parable of the 25th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus talks about when the Son of Man comes in all his glory and judges us, he will separate the sheep from the goats, and the ones on his right hand, the sheep. He will say to them, blessed are you, for from the foundation of this world you have inherited the kingdom of my Father. Come, O you blessed from the foundation of this world who have inherited the kingdom of my Father. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick and in prison, and you visited me. And they'll say to him, Lord, when did we do all of these things? And Jesus will say to him, when you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. And that's why James says to us that that's what the church should be doing. The first reason that we should do this is because we're doing it for God. That's a way of loving God. Now, I have more to say about that. Because I think we need to acknowledge that as the primary reason for doing it. In fact, that's what James lifts up as the primary reason. We showed a preference for the poor and not a deference for the rich. Because anything else is serving our needs in the world, whereas with showing a preference for the poor, we are showing a love for God. That's entirely James's message to the congregation. He also alludes to, but I'd say that there's a joy in this. There's a real joy in this, in serving the needs of the poor. There's a lady out here, Bill was telling me about this week, at Isla. Remember when they had the Head Start program at Isla? And there was a lady that cooked out there for the Head Start program. Loved her job. And the reason she loved her job was because no matter what she cooked, those kids would eat it. They'd never whine, they'd never complain, and they'd never turn it down. They'd gobble it right up, because then she knew that often when they went home at the afternoon after they had whatever she had given them that day, that was probably the last meal that they were going to have before they showed up for breakfast the next day at that Head Start program. And the next day when they showed up, they were hungry again, and they loved everything that she gave them. And it gave her a real sense of purpose. And that's what it does for us, to be the least. It gives us a sense of purpose because we have a higher calling than just to get ahead in this world. You know, Jesus himself said, what does it profit us if we gain the whole world but lose our soul? And so one other reason that we would be the least and care for the least is because the gains of this world are never lasting. And our lives have a greater and more eternal purpose. Not only is there joy in doing this, but there's a greater purpose for us all in living for the least. And we're at our best when we care for the least. Years ago, I worked at a Martin Luther home. It's a home for them, what we call retarded. We call them now mentally disabled. It was a Down syndrome man, about 38 at the time, and he had that cute Down syndrome face, and Albert was low intelligence, and Albert didn't have much going for him. He had a fisherman's hat, and that he wore all the time, and I never forgotten that. Had a wide brim on it. You know, it was one of those straw hats where the brim is turned up all the way around, and they had one of those wide felt belts that you stick lures in, stuff like that. And he would sit all day long and twirl that hat on his finger. We tried to get him involved in occupational therapy. We had a contract then at the Martin Luther home to put together those plastic curlers that are used for permanence. All you women know what I'm talking about. I don't. But anyway, I knew what they were and I knew how to put them together at that point. And we tried to get Albert to put those things together, you know, and he'd put a few together and then he'd grab his hat. And then you'd have to go by and say, Albert, now do a few more, and he'd put his hat down and he'd do two more and then he'd pick up his hat all day long and he'd finally give up. That was Albert, but he was such a good, kind-hearted soul. And we just kind of let him do whatever he was going to do. When I started work, it was in occupational therapy, and we had to take our turn on night duty. And so the first time I was on night duty, I noticed that Albert roomed with a young man who was feral. By feral, I mean he was acted like an animal, mostly. He snarled and growled and would hiss. He wouldn't talk not at all. He was furtively dancing everywhere. He was less, You know, he was just acting more animal-like than human. And I wondered why Albert would be roomed with him. So I asked the night supervisor, it'd be about time for the lights out. I said, why is Albert in this room? And she said, come here. So we went to the room, and I looked in, and here's this feral child, and he was circling his bed like a dog, you know, looking to lay down, but he just kept looking, circling his bed. You know how dogs would do that before they actually lay down? And that's what he was doing. And he looked very agitated. And it came over the loudspeakers, lights out. And when that announcement came over the loudspeakers, Albert, who was sitting on his bed on the other side of the room, twirling his hat, put his hat down, got up, walked over to this young man's bed, sat down on that bed, and put his arm on it. And that young man circled once, lay down, stretched out, and went to sleep. And Albert stayed there, touching him and comforting him till he was fully asleep. Supervisor looked at me and said, that's why we put Albert in this room. The world did not know, or would ever know, Albert. He'd never be great by anybody's standard. But that day for me, he was a giant. And I think in the eyes of God, he was too. You see, we all have that higher purpose, that greater calling. And James talks about that. And that is fulfilled not by any gains we can make in this world. We're at our best when we care for the least. Finally, back to the point that James himself makes. In doing this, we're loving God. And I know exactly what it means. I've been on mission trips. Some of them better than others. One of the best was to Costa Rica. We were building a medical clinic. We had a crew that often went on medical mission trips. One man on the crew was from our church, and he would go on medical missions. Well, on one to Haiti, the doctors saw a young girl who desperately needed an operation, especially if it was going to save her life. I mean, it would save her life, but they didn't have all the equipment they needed there to do it. And they didn't know what they were going to do. And so they talked to the man from our church. He says, they said they just couldn't do the operation. They shared that with the mission group. And this man from our church, he went to him and says, what do you need? Can you draw it for me? Can you describe it and draw it for me? And they tried to describe it and draw it out for him, the particular surgical tool they need. He said, I think I can make that for you. He got some scrap pieces together, and he worked his magic with tin and came up with this thing that was a little bit crude, but it served his purpose. And they were able to do this operation and save this young girl's life. And he never forgot that, so he was always going to go on any medical mission. Now, the one we were at in Costa Rica, where we were building this medical clinic, it was for the Indians who lived up in the rainforest. The Indians were the natives of Costa Rica. Costa Rica was, of course, colonized by the Spanish, and the Spanish often mixed with the Indians and created the Ricans, or the Costa Ricans. But there were some who never became intermarried with the Spanish, and there was a God racial prejudice, it still is in Costa Rica, against those natives. And so they would come down out of the rainforests and down to Turrialba and other mountain villages and await medical care for weeks and weeks. In other ways, they were discriminated against. It was a very terrible situation. The church, the Pentecostal Evangelical Metodisto congregation of Turrialba, was trying to build this medical clinic for them so that when they came down, they would staff up with missionary doctors and they would see them right away and they would get their medical needs attended to. That's where a lot of your mission dollars go, is to stuff like that. One of the ways you're helping them least is through mission outreach like that. And so we were building this medical clinic. There's a young boy though, and he was probably 18, 19, and he came by about every day. And the contractor who was overseeing the project didn't have a lot of time for him, but some of our people in the group kind of took him under their wing. The guy that I was talking about that made this surgical instrument, he started teaching him some things about how to do construction. This boy couldn't afford to go to school, he was poor. We were teaching him how to do things, to build things. And we got to talk to him. One night he visited us at our hotel. We'd listen, ask him about his story. We listened to his story. Nothing big, Here we are putting ourselves in the way of the poor, but nothing glorious or heroic was going on. We were just doing it, just doing this thing because we think it was serving God. And the day we got ready to leave, it was a Sunday, and we were having worship. Our bags were packed. We're getting ready to head for the airport. And this boy shows up at our hotel again. And he came and he worshiped with us. And then he asked if he could speak to us. And he said to us that day, he said, "You have been so kind to me this week. It's not, we think of you as Americans as rich, and people would have no time for people like me. But you listened to me. You cared about me. You taught me things I did not know." And he said, "I'm never going to forget you." And then he said, "Thank you." And before I came here today, I went to the pastor and I confessed Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And he said, "I wanted you to know that before you go home. If you show the love of God to others, you're serving God. And you're letting God love the ones he wants to love. The least of these." Let's take a look.